Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar today is about supplier PPAP, and it's about what software does and what software does not work with supplier PPAP, and probably more importantly, why some work and don't. It was driven by some recent conversations about PPAP software, especially supplier PPAP, with companies large and small across multiple industries. And I'd like to share what I heard and learned from these conversations. This is not a software demo. The idea is not to go through in a detailed software explanation, but I spoke ahead of time with some of the attendees today, and they asked me to just put some screenshots in to help visualize what I'm describing. So we put those in. From a housekeeping standpoint, the event will be recorded and available for viewing. If interested, we can also schedule a private event for your executive team. And again, we're going to discuss experience over the last 3 years I've had working with volunteers that use spreadsheets daily, and how they shared what they wanted in a software app, and probably more importantly, what they didn't want. There's a detailed slide deck that you can download during this event, and there will be a certificate of attendance emailed out to those who are on today. We have a great mix of attendees today. I mean, across multiple industries: aerospace, consumer products, food, medical device, and more. And a big mix of large OEMs and smaller suppliers. And I'm going to try to adapt the material to address across most of those. But I just want to make sure this is not going to teach you PPAP. So hopefully you already know what it is. Hopefully you've already had some experience trying to use various tools. Whether it's just email and spreadsheets, or maybe a big system that's annoying and cumbersome and you want to go back to spreadsheets. And you may or may not require supplier PPAPs, but if you do, that's even a bigger mess once you go outside your four walls. Baby steps is the name of the game, and it's basically setting small, reasonable goals, one day at a time, one tiny step at a time, doable goals. A lot of the software that fails isn't necessarily a failure because of the software, but it's just, I mean, we're just going from a mess to a very rigid, intense enterprise app that just freaks people out. So as we go through this, the idea is there a way to take what I'm doing today and make it a little bit better? I did put this slide in because we do have a lot of industries in there. Of course, aerospace has just adopted APQP and PPAP with AS9145. The food industry is moving away from search to more of a process view. AdvaMed published PPAP guidance for the medical device industries. I mean, FMEAs are almost everywhere. But some of the conversations, I run into is, well, we don't do PPAP or APQP. We have certificates of conformance. We have first articles. We don't make high volume parts. So who cares? Well, the who cares part is, however you do new product launches, however you want to assure that if there's an engineering change, a tooling change, or some change going on with you and your suppliers, do you have a well-defined process? And even internal, I'll go off on internal PPAPs for a minute. I mean, we need more than just a router that was created for, op 10 takes 30 minutes for scheduling and accounting. And the idea is, do you and your suppliers know the risks? Open minds, everybody knows what's going on. And if you know about them, how do you manage them? So, how do you know what's going on? I mean, obvious is failure cost. Look at the recalls, warranty. And if you can get that down by part number and even a characteristic level, you can really start making something magic happen. And the idea basically is this. I didn't make this up. I'm quoting a very intelligent friend of mine who said, the challenge is, when we're looking at failures, did we know about the problem and we missed it? Or did we not know about it at all? And again, that's kind of the whole thought behind production part approval process. This is a great article. I put the URL in here that talks about lean principles applied to PPAP. Sending PPAP submissions that get rejected by your customers, working on overproduction, working on things that I don't necessarily need yet. Transportation, just think about set of parts, emails flying around and documents flying around. I'd highly recommend you look at the article. It does a great job in, if your company is a lean, would put it in context. But as far as the why bother goes, if you understand the concepts of lean and eliminate waste, you can get a better way for your organization to build a knowledge base from the PPAP process. And reduce a lot of waste. I mean, reduce how long it takes to make them, how long it takes to submit them and get them approved, improve their effectiveness. Again, the idea being, whether you use formal PPAP or not, the idea being we're trying to figure out a way with our suppliers to see what they're doing and what they're working on. All right, so back to the session's tagline, what works and doesn't work. Here's an absolute, hopefully no-brainer. I shouldn't say that. It's not a no-brainer because people make this mistake all the time. Without understanding what your people need and how the process works, the software will fail. I've been in conversations with a lot of organizations and people where we bought this and it didn't work, and we bought this and it didn't work, but they bought it because the software salesperson says, oh, it does all that PPAP stuff, but it doesn't. And when I say it doesn't, how would I know? Well, by going out and talking to your people and seeing what's going on. So the other thing that's really important to understand is if you go out and talk to your people about what they need and maybe do a flow chart of how the process actually works and start listening to them, here's what the volunteers told me over and over and over that helped create this app or this idea. If it's too complicated, I'm going back to spreadsheets. I mean, that was the mantra over and over. I just had a call today with a major PLM consulting group. And one of the questions is, well, they always go back to spreadsheets. And I said, yeah, I know, because it's too complicated. And, one of the other taglines they gave me is, look, I'm not trying to have the software do my job. I just want it to make my job easier. So all this, you got to configure this and set that up and automated workflows that do this and all. Let's just take a baby step again. I've got this K drive or SharePoint or something with a bunch of files in it, and I'd like to do it better. The last bullet that I included for this is don't automatically do anything. Let me decide. And the reason that came up was a story from an individual that says, I was using this other software and it would, if I went from Rev A to Rev B, it would take the Rev B changes and ripple it through all my documents automatically. And he goes, no, don't ever do that. I've got a PPAP submission being approved by a customer, or maybe I just got it yesterday, got it approved, and now you're changing everything, and we're not even making it to Rev B yet. So there's a whole lot of thought behind, I'm just trying to get out of a spreadsheet mess. This was a quote from a person that heard a version of this presentation, and he came up to me and said, John, we spent 5 years and $5 million trying to get 3 different PLM apps to launch for PPAP, and they all failed. And the reason is, this remember I said why it does or does not work. PLM apps are very rigid on purpose. They're engineering apps, and they're helping people design airplanes, cars, very systems. And the reason it fails is the user roles are very, very different between people that design systems and people that make parts. And this whole issue is about very rigid versus flexible. I mean, they think differently, they use different vocabulary, different terms. Design may say, hey, I want the inside of the plane to be quiet. And the part people are saying, oh, well, I need to use this adhesive. I need to put this screw on it, this pressure. So it's just difference. Designers do need highly engineered tools. The PLM apps that do that are phenomenal, but it's focused on potential design-related failures. Parts are focusing on potential process failures and their causes. So again, big difference. And when you try to take a tech center, R&D center mentality and throw it down to people that make parts, it's very difficult. And I don't think I've ever seen it work. Here's an example. There's some software tools that automatically connect the design FEMA out of the tech center to the process FEMA down to the part people. And what I put in here is I said, well, I want it to automatically connect. Now, conceptually, of course it connect, but I want the software to connect them for me. So the example I have here is, so you want me to take the text field in the DFMEA, the failure mode, the cause, and the effect, and somehow resort that and reword it into a PFMEA? I mean, it's just a bad idea. This is where it starts to fail. If you're taking design information, design vocabulary, design thoughts, and push it automatically into a process FEMA, that's not how the part guys talk. It's not how they think. So be careful. Now, when I've said that before, I said, well, other software does it. It doesn't do it well. I mean, it doesn't work. That's your failure. So the last question is say, well, then if the software's not going to do it automatically, how are we supposed to do it? My answer is, let's just use people. Let's get the design people talking to the part people, get them in a room, have them go through and talk and articulate. This is what the training tells you about. And again, some software companies said, well, we'll do that automatically. I strongly recommend don't do it automatically. It wasn't intended to, and it doesn't work well. Now, the other challenge is I've had several large software companies and the executives that invested in them tell me, well, we already bought software that does that. And here's what I learned. Some organizations think that project management is the only thing that PPAP's about. Here's the 18, 21, whatever number of tasks you want. And they spend about, I don't know, 80% of their time on project management. Whereas the document authoring of the DFEMA's, process flows, PFEMA control plans, gate studies, et cetera, that's where most of the work is. And the easy part is managing the project. And by the way, if you do a bad job on your task management, you missed a deadline, bummer. The hard part where the people are asking for help is document authoring. And by the way, if you do that wrong, that's where we get product recalls, scrap, warranty, costs money. So it's a mix max. We flipped the 80-20 kind of in the wrong order. It's almost 80% of the time should be on document authoring and 20% on project management. So, but again, they said, look, we've got all these tasks, we upload all these spreadsheets, we've got PPAP covered. Well, some of you probably have already seen this before, but simply uploading spreadsheets is a risk. Study after study have numbers like 90% of spreadsheets have errors in them. And when you think about this, being such a critical business process, the planning, awareness of what my process is, what my risks are, and how I'm going to control them. Why would we do that in spreadsheets? It was in automotive, they reported 400 major and 6,000 minor audit findings on control plans. And when I first saw that, I just go, that can't be right. I mean, automotive's been doing this for decades. How can we possibly? Oh, that's right. They're in spreadsheets. So I can add an OP10 in the process flow that doesn't go to the PFEMA. I can change a critical characteristic because they're not linked. So, I mean, just think about it. We would never do accounts payable, account receivable, even CRM in spreadsheets. This has got to be one of the most mission critical things for a part manufacturer to do. And we've got to get over the hurdle of how to do that. So again, to stress the point, if you've created supplier portals where people upload forms, or you've got project management software, simply uploading spreadsheets is a risk. It's bad. And one of the comments I had is, well, John, it's better than nothing. And I said, no, it's not. There's a huge potential legal risk. I mean, you're now taking a transaction from a supplier, and most of the time, the reality is when you go out and walk and talk to the people, most organizations do not do a good job at supplier PPAP reviews because it's just a task on a task plan that's assigned to an engineer that already has 50 things assigned to them. And the majority of them get approved about 10 minutes after purchasing calls and says, Cachet, approve that PPAP because we can't ship the parts. So, and again, this is a major issue where the perception from executives are, we already have that. Now remember, what I heard for the last 3 years is if it's too complicated, I'm going back to spreadsheets. And then, some of the field said, oh, well, John, it's not a spreadsheet. We put in the HTML form up on it. I said, well, all right. Kind of the same. I mean, you can't really move columns, change columns, add a copy. I mean, it's not really spreadsheet-like. All you did was kind of put it in a different front end. So a lot of frustrations on this subject. Interesting enough, though, I'm getting a lot of response now from Chief XO or Chief Operating CEOs, CFOs, purchasing guys. But it seems like others in the industry have given up. We can't do this because of ITAR, or we can't do this because of the FDA, or we've already done it this way. We have to do it this way. I mean, some of them are pretty honest. Say, look, I'm just filling out the spreadsheet, send it in because I just got to get this thing done. Our customers tell us to use this form, and again, there's a lot. Didn't we already buy software that does this? So, it's funny when you hear those because the people say, well, we can't do it because of ITAR or something, but they're running around with spreadsheets and, unsecured USB drives and K drives and on laptops. This to make this work, we got to have interaction between engineering, the plants, and more suppliers. I mean, especially what's going on as organizations, at least in North America, are thinking about moving suppliers back to North America. There's this whole rumbling going on about how can we do this better, quicker, faster. So this idea, didn't we already buy this? Some of it says, well, John, based on your experience, is going in the ERP app, or is it in PLM, or is it the enterprise quality app? We make parts, we don't design them, and the whole issue again is, this is the wrong question. Early on, I said, we got to go out and talk to the people about their processes and then review the software. The software comes last. Trying to stuff PPAP into software we already bought just because we already bought it, it doesn't work. It never works. One ERP story that comes up, one of the volunteers, a corporate quality professional, a very large multi-billion-dollar company, said, John, our ERP does this already. It's already part. We don't need anything like this. So again, from my training, if you will, go out and walk the floor or walk the engineering office or the quality office and talk to them. Long story short, when I found out the person that actually does the document authoring, asked them, how do you do this? And they looked at me and smiled and said, oh, we do it all in Excel and then we upload it. I shared that detailed story because, again, the executive's perception was, we already bought stuff to do this. And most of the times, this is kind of a revelation in the last couple of weeks, their perception of doing PPAP is task management. They may not even be aware of all the activity going on in spreadsheets or what has to be done. So again, if you make parts, don't try to force a system design and DFMEA on suppliers. One of the other volunteers said, we've had all sorts of software companies looking at this. This is a person that uses Excel every day for the last 10 years to do this. And he goes, the vendors start off with, well, first you do the DFMEA, which again, conceptually, logically, it makes sense. He raised his hand and goes, we don't do DFMEAs. And the software demo stops. So, well, if you don't do the DFMEA, how do you flow it down to? That's part of the issue. And because not only do we not do them, but our supplier or our customers won't give them with us. We try to meet with them. That's a whole nother story. But anyhow, baby steps again is the goal is, can we do something better than spreadsheets, but not too complex? Because if it's too complex, I'm going back to spreadsheets. So this is a map that I drew on the wall with a couple of clients a while back that says, here's what's going on. I'm trying to explain to executives, all the software they've already spent a lot of money on. We computerized accounting, payables, receivables. By the way, the reason we did that, it took too long and it was inaccurate. Sound familiar? Then when we got the accounting things, they said, "Whoa, you got too much money in inventory." I said, "All right, we better do inventory better." Then engineering got some support. We went from CAD to PDM to PLM. Sales and marketing said, "Me too, me too." Shop got some stuff, but this whole quality thingy is still kind of hovering around the middle. So it's like, seriously, John, I got to buy another app. I got to buy more software from everything where I spent. Well, if you double click and go down a notch, what we want to try to get them to understand is take everything off the screen. And we're talking to either your plants that make parts or suppliers that make parts. And this is a slide that I think is very helpful in trying to explain that we're we're not trying to replace PLM. We're not trying to replace your enterprise quality systems, but we're trying to make you aware that there's a whole bunch of stuff being done in Excel, business critical stuff. I mean, like mistakes cause recalls, warranties cost a lot of money that we're doing in Excel. So it's not competitive. It's not trying to fight or saying they're wrong or different. Of course, we need PLM if we're doing DFMEAs. Of course, we need enterprise quality systems. But there's more to supplier PPAP than a task list and upload and stuff. So here's my executive simple screen. What works depend on who you are. And do you need something complex or do you need something simple? If you're doing systems, you need a PLM. If you're doing parts, maybe not. If you're doing systems, no way you're going to do it on spreadsheets. You're not going to do finances on spreadsheets. You're not going to do all this stuff on spreadsheets. That's what systems views mean. But right now, because there's not really any alternative that I can just get it done quickly so I can get this thing submitted and approved, the part guys are sticking in spreadsheets. So what would better than spreadsheets look like, but not too complex? From a very high level, the analysis says, well, again, I'm making parts, so I need a part list, and that part list needs to have characteristics. Operations may have been done in the quoting process. That's what the inventory guys and accounting guys need to know, up 10, up 20, up 30. Some process characteristics, and that is where we start to get the heart of here's how I'm going to make it. And by the way, when here's how I'm going to make it, that's beyond the router. A lot of folks, especially in aerospace, said, I already have a router, or I need a process flow. Well, again, routers were created to say for scheduling, this op takes an hour, and for costing, this op takes an hour. It wasn't intended to create information and knowledge about here's what we're going to do into the PFEMA, here's what our risks are, and here's how we're going to control it in the control plan view. So again, the idea is keep it simple. Now, if possible, of course, we'd connect this to an ERP or PLM. We shouldn't have to rebuild or re-enter this stuff. That, of course not. One of the things I really think is important is we got to start exporting characteristics from the engineering docs. It's a critical step, both internal with suppliers. I've talked to a lot of ballooning software companies over the last couple of months, and we really need to help both our plants, but more importantly, suppliers. Now think about this. Imagine if your suppliers were asked to do a PPAP submission, and when they open the software tool, the part number, the rev number, the product characteristics, process characteristics were already there. Now, maybe even more importantly, if you're purchasing the same part number from multiple suppliers, Wouldn't it be nice when supplier A ballooned the part, supplier B ballooned the part, and supplier C ballooned the part, we got all the same characteristic, all in the same orders. So that's something that's really important. But in general, risk management is across all these folks. We got to get across all the folks. So, by the way, it's interesting because the idea of projects, do we need projects in this app? Again, that might be, I didn't do a diagram of this, but the matrix might be, if I'm a $1 billion global company, I'm sure I already got a project management tool somewhere. And if you do, use it. But as I go further down the supply chain, the suppliers I worked with said, I don't need Microsoft Project. I don't need, start date, end date, percent complete, and all this stuff that I had no clue. If you could just give me a task list and I could just go somewhere and say, hey, it's today, what do I need to work on? That would be great. So again, the complexity of that depends on who you are and what you're doing. So I mentioned some people asked to put some shots in. Here's some things that they wanted. It'd be nice if we had real-time spell checking. I mean, of course, spreadsheets can do it if you're in mind to do it. For quality professionals, sending documents to customers with typos in it, it's kind of embarrassing. But just like Excel, I want to sort by column. I want to filter by column. I want to search by things. That kind of flexibility. I'd like the ability when I'm authoring these documents to pin columns like I can in Excel. The ability to, by the way, if any of you haven't seen it yet, the new AIG VDA FMEA, it gets kind of wide. There's a lot of columns in it. So the ability to scroll back and forth like you do in Excel and pin things and control what's going on. Again, Excel-like, or maybe hide columns. With what I'm working on right now, with what I'm viewing at, the ability to just temporarily hide columns so I can scroll back and forth easier. When the volunteers I work with said, I love Excel and I hate Excel, this is some of the stuff they like. The other one was the ability to have multiple templates. Now, that was being done in Excel with like file save as. Let me give you a specific. Customer A calls it operation description / function. Customer B calls it operations. And I'm just talking about headers. So in Excel, they would file save as and then try to get a template or a format for that particular customer's layout, which is understandable. That's all they had to work with. But if we move a little bit better, we could have the ability to teach our organization how to do this. And then at the end say, well, how do you want it to look when we send it to the customer? You want to use customer A template? You want to use customer B template? Because they're mostly just changing headers and moving some columns around. And again, what they said is, boy, if you could do that, that would save all the mistakes of, oh my gosh, I just spent 3 hours doing this in the customer A template, and it's got to be in the customer B template. Do I start over? Do I cut and paste? That kind of stuff. The other one that, to do rev control is mostly just file save as again and put a date on it. The ability to just get a snapshot of the documents you're authoring, mark it as a release. Now, this, I don't mean necessarily a release to your customer yet or internal, but a way to say, yeah, the team met on Friday. We're okay with all the changes we did. Let's post a version of that to keep track of what you've been doing, and of course have access to it. The other one that was actually, I thought it was kind of funny at first until we really got into it. But one of the volunteers said, all right, I got one for you. The right side of the FMEA is always blank. He goes, all right, maybe not always. Maybe some people type something in, but they never do anything with it. And what the volunteer challenged us was, look, either drop the right side of the FMEA or give me a better way to management. And again, if I move out of Excel into a little bit better database, now I have the ability to keep track of all the action items, who they're assigned to, when they were completed, the before, I mean, all the stuff on the right side of the form. But that was, he goes, if I'm trying to do that in my spreadsheet that already has 5 tabs in it, Now we need another tab to keep track of action items. Now those are actually, it just gets worse and worse. So the ability to just have one place that you can go in and find it. And I mentioned this briefly, but this is a form configurator. The way that I can go in and create templates to change text, where it's viewed, where it's included, to just bring things to exactly the format I want. And again, the flexibility to do that during the authoring and production and release process. One of the other things that I've heard over and over is frustration. This is a very important slide for both big and small companies. I've heard a lot of frustration that PPAP, supplier PPAP, the quality people do that. We don't have time for that. We've got parts to make. And if you're having a hard time getting management's attention, they don't read your reports, your emails, go out and talk to them, ask their opinion, ask their ideas, ask for help. And if you engage them, here's some things you can talk about. If you're talking to legal, this approach can help you protect the company. There was another company I'm working with. I've worked on them for a long time, and they said, John, do you remember when the product liability lawyers, started asking for FMEAs? They didn't know what an FMEA was, but they said we should probably look at this and see if we can get anything out of it. I go, yes, I remember that. He goes, well, guess what? Now they're saying if that part that broke, that impacted my client, is that a purchase part? And the rest, yeah, it is a purchase part. Can you show me the supplier PPAP on that? So they're going down another step. And again, this is a step where the risk is huge. Well, geez, you got this DF or PFMEA and control plan, you approved it, and that thing doesn't even have the characteristic on it. I mean, those kind of conversations. It's marketing, protect the brand. Any of the stuff that happens out there that's bad, that could be prevented if we can do a better job. Finance, that's kind of the classic, and I'm changing this a little bit too. The Fram Oil commercial, pay me now or pay me later discussion. I probably should change the slide, because really right now, the best way to engage finance is just talk about scrap, rework, warranty recalls, because they have buckets in their system for that. They can tell you how much that costs. And again, if you can say, well, let's just take a look real quick on the last recall we had. Let's go through and look at what kind of PPAPs we had. Let's look at what kind of material we approved. Engineering, I mean, of course, they got to be part of the game. This goes back to the PLM conversation. They really need to help provide the data. They should be the master part number. They should have the master drawings, whether they're 3D drawings or 2D drawings. But they've got the start of the process. They've got that data, that characteristic list. Purchasing, you really need to define supplier expectations on this whole subject. I don't want to guess on a percent. I'm just going to say a lot of purchasing people, I'm hesitating because I hate to say this, but has actually told suppliers, hey, just fill out the spreadsheet and send it in. Those quality people have to have that before you can ship. I mean, it's a horrible misrepresentation of what's going on. And of course, the supplier's going to do as they're told. Purchasing pays them, quality doesn't. So purchasing has to set the expectation. Ops, look, you guys are right in the middle of this. You're the ones that are making the parts that we're trying to help. You need to get us some feedback on what's working and not working. Of course, quality, yes, you have a role to play, but you're not responsible for supplier PPAPs. Quality is a place where we can go and look and do compliance and do continuous improvements and do audits. Quality, it would be great if we can sit down with accounting and say, you know what I'd like to do? Let's go through and look at and just do failure costs, internal, external, I don't care, but just look at those and sit side by side with, here's the financial numbers and here's what the PPAP documents. It's like, wow, that's weird. That failure we had, we didn't even think that was a risk. This is back to, did we know it and miss it, or do we not know it at all? Or, wow, look, that is a big risk. but the control plan's not right. I mean, that's where we can bring it to life and make it better than just something you got to do to get parts approved. So back to the executive team, the whole idea behind all this, whether you're using formal supplier PPAP or not, is to get confidence in suppliers in their production process. We want to make sure they've got their act together. And back to what's going on, if you're going to start moving a bunch of business, whether it's back to North America or Asia or wherever you're at, when you move, you really, really need to get this right. You know, companies, we don't want unapproved parts on the production line, and we don't want rubber stamp parts on the production line. And of course, it's easier to get this stuff done early on. But if you're not using it, should you? The lawyers are coming, and they're looking for negligence and supplier PPAPs. I think you should. So the goals are pretty simple. Hold the supplier responsible for their ability to produce parts and meet specs, and make sure that the PPAP reviews are actual reviews. I mean, if you could take that baby step, that would be great. Here's another thing that came up. Workflow. We got to have automated workflow. So, all right. So this is the process flow chart out of the AIG manual. So I go up to the grease board, and the first volunteer tells me what they do. I put it all out and go, is this how you do it? He goes, yes. Volunteer 2, how do you do it? He goes, no, I don't do it that way. All right, well, tell me how you do it. So we go through all this stuff. The third guy didn't even have to ask. He just said, John, I don't do it the first way or the second way. In fact, I have 3 different ways because I have 3 different customers that want it 3 different ways. Some want full submission, some want partial submission, some want this. So this is, again, if you don't sure what's going on, is workflow needed? Well, if you go out there, the perception is we already do PPAP and all this stuff. It's in RP, it's in PLM. It's really, it's not that tough. And if you're just looking at project management, it probably isn't that tough. But if you actually go out and see what's going on, it's usually a mess. No, I've got to get this done, and I send it over to them, and then they've got to get it together, and then we got to move it over here, and then if they reject it, it goes back over here, and it should be a simple process. So what we really need to do, again, start with talking to the people, start with understanding your process, then take a look at the software. Again, just repeat, anytime you force software on people, they're going to resist it. So, what do you mean we don't need workflow? Well, remember, the volunteers weren't trying to get the workflow to do their job for them. They're trying to make it easier. So here's what they said. They go, what would be really cool? On my task list, if I could go in and click on the deliverables that I want to submit, click a publish button, create a zip file with all the attachments in it and a project report, that would be very, very helpful. Now listen to that, because this is a challenge, especially in the larger companies. Well, PLM has all the workflow, and it can automatically do this, and it can send it to this, and if it's too late, it goes over here, yeah, that's fine. That's the complexity where people say, forget it, I'm going back to Excel. If I got to set all that up, look, I can call Bob. I can, talk to go see talk to the vendor. I can talk to them about what it is. All I want to do is make it easy to have it where this vendor wants to see them all at once, or I'm sorry, this customer wants to see them all at once. This customer wants to see this. Oh, we had to do a resubmit. We had to update the control plan. They want to, that's the kind of stuff they said, just make it easier. So a lot of this has to think about when you're talking about what works and doesn't work is, what do you want the human to do and what do you want the computer to do? And almost every time when the expectation is the software is going to do and replace a human's work, they tend to fail because the humans have the flexibility and adaptability to do things that's needed. So when in doubt, humans decide was the mantra we had. And again, this is back to baby steps. Give me something better than spreadsheets but not too complicated. Let me publish the project. Let me build these things together. This is another one that they said, yes, this would be really helpful. Because I have a bunch of PPAP submissions in a bunch of spreadsheets across a bunch of in a K drive SharePoint where I got them, I don't really have a common view about show me all the tasks that I have to work on, especially that right side of the FMEA task. And the idea was just give me a simple place to do that. Now, again, the argument could be, well, John, our project management system already does that. That's great. We're not trying to compete with anything. We're trying to fill gaps and support it. But when we get down lower in the organizations that don't have enterprise PLMs, that suppliers that don't have all the resources that your organization might, what they told me, it would be great with a single click of the mouse, I could see what I'm working on. So what the process flow kind of looks like in most companies, a PO drives the request. It's part number revision level driven. That's where engineering needs to help. They need to help getting me those characteristics. It would be nice if you shared the DFMEA. I know that's not happening, but theoretically, when I went through the training, that's what they said should happen. The supplier does their thing and sends it back, and we do a review. Now, one of the other things I'd like to share with you is there's been some very innovative suppliers doing PPAPs before the purchase order as part of the sales process. And they've used it as a competitive advantage about, well, based on the drawings you sent us and based on what you're looking for, this is how we think we're going to build it. This is what we think the risks are. And this is how we're going to make sure you get good parts. And it works. And I don't want to be too crazy in this statement, but not only does it work in winning, some of them have told me we get higher price. So trying to make sure we're supporting more than just filling out these forms. All right, so the recommended solution, the baby step, is this way to bridge the gap. Now there's another file you can download during this event about helping suppliers, and it's a whole set of arguments about why we can't get off spreadsheets, why we can't change anything. We already talked about bad data. I've had some say, oh, it's too hard to learn. I don't know. Let's just try it for a half hour and see. I mean, these are now, I don't want to be age discriminatory, but these are now younger folks or even older folks that are buying stuff on Amazon. They're using all sorts of web apps. They can look at it and kind of figure out if you're looking for parts, you click on part. We've always used spreadsheets. That's okay. But if you always use a screwdriver as a crowbar, it doesn't mean it's a good crowbar. It's just you've always used it. So you really need to take a look at that. But again, that white paper, take a look at it. Just a couple of our quick ones is we don't need this big database thing. These files aren't that big. I've heard that over and over, and then I've seen FMEAs and control plans with 250 rows in them. Actually, I've seen some with 10,000, which is crazy. But there's a whole nother white paper you can download on that. So here's what I'm suggesting: take a baby step. Now, and again, this can be in your plants or with your suppliers, but take a baby step. Let's move from standalone, non-integrated, broken spreadsheets to something database. As the minimum, we can get better security and audit trail out of it. Now, there's a whole nother start of stuff about analytics and things we can do without spreadsheets, but let's just take the baby step. So, whether it's cloud-based or on-premise, if you want to do it for all your suppliers, a single instance, all-in-one cloud app that's capable, get corporate view across all your plants and suppliers, integrate it with the apps where you can get the data. That is the kind of thing that I think is a good baby step. And again, as I mentioned, I've got some detailed screenshots and webinars are available if you want to do that. If you want to learn, just let me know. But today was more about what works and doesn't work and why. A couple more notes and then we'll go into Q&A. The reporting and analytics capability when we move out of spreadsheets is a lot of fun. what's, are we getting better or worse? I don't know. What do I have to work on in my own time? I mean, just RPNs. What's the average RPN by product or product family? What's the highest risk we have? What's the lowest risk we have? I mean, all sorts of things that can be in the database world. This last one was added specifically from some of the participants today that wanted to go through and talk about, all right, got it, makes sense. Yes, it'd be great if I can go from spreadsheet, a baby step to some relational database. I can't get approval. All right, this is a little summary, or recap, but if you can't get approval, finance and accounting needs to be your best friend. You need to go in there and ask for help, talk to them. And again, just start with failure costs and just say, I'm trying to figure out, and I gave this example earlier, I'm just trying to figure out, we thought this was not a risk at all, but boy, look at all the money on failure we've got, or vice versa. We thought this was a real high risk and it never happens. Ask for their help. The ops folks, again, they know the aggravation on shipping and receiving. They know what getting the PPAP not approved impacts them. How bad does it impact them? Would they be on your team to say, yes, this would help get it better, quicker, faster? Engineering, I've talked way too much about them already, but we've got to get them involved on purchase parts a lot. And again, I don't just mean a poor overworked engineer who goes into a PLM and rubber stamps documents because he's got too much stuff to have. And the other one is that lean article, the URL I gave you. If you're interested, go in and take a look at that. I think you'll appreciate the analogy. So we do have some time for questions. If you have many, go ahead and type them in. We don't. All right, this is a long one. I'm going to paraphrase it. The software vendor did tell our management that what we bought does PPAP, but it does not. Now what do I do? Again, just go out and document the actual process, ask its accounting to help, get the actual process flow, how you create, submit, all the way through the approval. And the other thing I will advise you is no one wants to be told they're stupid or they wasted money. So this isn't about being smarter than them saying, hey, it doesn't do it. It's more about a conversation. Say, I went out and I studied it and I looked at it and it really doesn't do what we think. The problem we're having is not this, it's this. It's got to be a team ask for help effort, not a you idiots, you spent a lot of money on something that doesn't work. I tried to use an app, but it would not upload my old spreadsheets, so it was too much work to move it over. All right, no, thanks for asking, because again, that comes up a lot. The majority of the volunteers that helped design this thing were frustrated with broken links using the same failure mode with text that's 18 different ways. I mean, they said they're a mess. And what I mean by that is, after going through a little bit, and it wasn't an immediate, agreement, but it was, you know what, I really don't want to upload my old spreadsheets. What I'd like to be able to do is set up a infrastructure that lets me build a good, if you will, template. Some of them start building supplier templates, or I'm sorry, not supplier, part templates, project templates, like they're used to in Excel. But anyhow, long story short, the conclusion was uploading old spreadsheets is a bad idea. Now, one other quick comment on that is the follow-up question is, well, the other ones do it. Well, that's back to the crowbar thing. So yeah, a screwdriver can do it too, but it doesn't make it a better crowbar. So be careful about that. Let's read this one. What experience, good or bad, on helping multidisciplinary teams work together on PPAP requirements? Quite a bit. And the bad experience is when it's not a team. The good experience is when it is a team. Now that's a simple answer. Let me go in a little more detail. Well, actually, I was going to think that necessarily. The small companies, the suppliers, let's just talk about them for now because it's about supplier PPAP. They do multidisciplinary teams by nature because there's only like 10 of them. So, in their daily walkthroughs and their daily things they're doing, they just talk to each other. The challenge with multidisciplinary teams is when we get hired and say, well, don't worry, the team's all in PLM and it'll track everything. In fact, if Cachet's late and he doesn't respond, we're going to send it to his boss and tell on him. It's like, whoa, that's not helping anybody. So yeah, this it still goes back to people, process, software. We've got to have multiple disciplinary teams working together. The bigger you are, the more complicated it is. The process doesn't have to get complicated, but sometimes the software has this expectation that, well, the software does that. I don't have to worry about it. It'll tell me when I'm late. And I got a lot of other things I got to work on. So yeah, there's, depending on the tool and the software, there's a lot of it. What you described looks like a good idea. There's something out there that fills that. Yes, that's a technology that I'd be more than happy to show you. It wasn't intended to go in this webinar. I was just trying to articulate pros and cons. But yes, if you'd like to see a detailed demo or know more about it, I'd be happy to do that with you. One more. We have PLM and a good workflow, but we still send PPAP worksheets and emails and get documents over emails. Will the software support request approval and updates and all that? And rejections. The answer is yes, that's the idea. Remember, if you already have PLM and it has workflow you want, I'm not anti-workflow. And the baby step we can take is not to compete with PLM, not to do redundant. They have a project, we have a project. Just focus on the document authoring. And the idea being, especially from suppliers, if I could have a single instance, multi-tenant supplier app where PLM's tied to it, that's controlling all the stuff it does well, just help me author documents better. That's a great question because that's the heart of it. The smaller you get, you need some of this other stuff. The bigger you get, just take what's necessary and important. And really, the bulk of that is document authoring. All right, again, there's one other question about a certificate. The certificates are mailed probably in the next day or so. It's automatically through the app, through GoToWebinar. And if you had a typo in your name, send it back to me and we can take care of that as well. But thank you so much for your time. I hope it was helpful. Again, if you have any other questions, you want to know more, you can contact me at jmc@bproso.com. Thank you all for your time.